With the New York Giants starting 0-3 to open the 2025 season, they decided to make a major change at the quarterback position. Russell Wilson has been benched in favor of their rookie quarterback, Jaxson, who did look very good in the preseason. Now, a couple weeks ago, I was not on board with this move, but with how Russell Wilson played against Kansas City, they had to do something. We have to look at it from this standpoint here. Brian Daboll is on the hot seat with Joe Schoen. Daniel Jones, they pushed him out the door. This man right now with the Indianapolis Colts, he's having a career year. They're 3-0. Saquon, the entire debacle with Joe Schoen, and that was recorded on HBO Max with the Hard Knock series. That was a bad look for Joe Schoen. He leaves, and his first year with the Philadelphia Eagles has a career year, and he wins a Super Bowl. Xavier McKinney, who left this organization, he goes to the Green Bay Packers. One of the best safeties in the NFL last year. He had 8 interceptions at that position. So it seems like every single major player that leaves the New York Giants, they go elsewhere and they're better off. That's a lot to say about this coaching staff and the front office. Now, we all know the ownership with the Giants has been terrible for many years now. But it's a bad look on Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll when all those other players, when they leave and they go elsewhere in the NFL and they perform better. So this is a head coach. He's grasping at straws at this point. He's doing anything possible to save his job. And I do not believe that it's going to work long term. Let's just be honest here. The rest of the schedule for the New York Giants, it is tough. You're starting Jaxson at home against the Los Angeles Chargers. That's one of the best teams in the NFL this season. They forced Geno Smith to throw 3 interceptions. They were hard on Bo Nix this previous week. And look at what they did against Patrick Mahomes in Brazil. That's a veteran defensive play caller in Jesse Minter. We'll see if Brian Daboll can step up in this matchup with Jaxson. You face the New Orleans Saints. That should be a win for the New York Giants. Then you face the Philadelphia Eagles at home, the Denver Broncos, and the Eagles again, then the San Francisco 49ers. There's a good chance that the New York Giants may be 1-8 this season. But that is how tough the schedule is. And I will say this about Russell Wilson before we get into the positives with starting Jaxson, because there are going to be many positives here. Russell Wilson's career is over. Since he left the Seattle Seahawks, he hasn't been the same player. We could talk about him being older. When he went to the Denver Broncos, that was a failure. Yes, you had Nathaniel Hackett, who was a terrible head coach in his first year with the Broncos, and he was tied for being the most sacked quarterback in the NFL at the time with Justin Fields. But Russell Wilson was viewed as this franchise difference maker. He was not that for the Broncos. And year number 2, Sean Payton got the most out of him that he could. Sean Payton said, look, we have to move on. It's not going to work out. As soon as they move off of Russell Wilson, they make the NFL playoffs the next year with Bo Nix. Russell Wilson goes over to the Steelers, misses the first couple of weeks with the Steelers, dealing with a calf injury. They push him into the starting lineup. They lost their last 5 games of the regular season. They push him out the door in favor for Aaron Rodgers. He comes over to the New York Giants in week 1 against the Washington Commanders. He missed a lot of throws in that matchup. He only had 168 passing yards. And he was 17 of 37, 0 passing touchdowns, 0 interceptions. But he was scanning the field late, had a lot of missed passes. He was not the sole reason why they lost that matchup, but he didn't help. The expectation for Russell Wilson was to come in and to look better than Daniel Jones. That was not the case in week 1, and he got sacked and beat up a lot behind this offensive line. Against the Dallas Cowboys, he was 30 of 41, 450 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns, and he did throw an interception. But it's the Dallas Cowboys defense. They're terrible right now. Statistically, they have the worst defense in the NFL because they cannot rush the passer. Any quarterback that makes it to this level, if you go against a non-existent pass rush, they're going to carve up your secondary with the right pieces. And that's what we saw in week 2 with Russell Wilson. Yes, it was a good game, but we have to look at the context here. And they could have won that matchup. We'll talk about how the defense has failed this team within the first 2 weeks with Shane Bowen. They performed better in week 3. Then we go over against Kansas City. He was terrible from the first snap. He missed so many throws. Wide receivers were open. He's holding on to the football for a very long time. All the negatives came out in this matchup against Kansas City. The defense has performed the best they have so far underneath Shane Bowen against Patrick Mahomes. You could have been in this matchup. But Russell Wilson's underthrowing wide receivers, overthrowing wide receivers. It was 4th and goal. He throws the football out of bounds. He's not a good starting quarterback anymore. and maybe they move him elsewhere. Maybe he goes to the Cincinnati Bengals in a trade. But the Russell Wilson that we once saw with the Seattle Seahawks, he's gone. And I think that it's time for Russ to retire. This was a man that benefited from a strong run game with Marshawn Lynch and an amazing defense with the Legion of Boom. And he made a lot of great throws to Doug Baldwin, and the same with Tyler Lockett. But he's not the same guy. In order to get the most out of Russell Wilson, you need a great offensive line because he's going to hold on to the football for a very long time. And you need amazing defense because he will miss throws at this stage of his career. And he no longer has that mobility. The New York Giants were ranked dead last in red zone percentage last year with Daniel Jones. They're 31st this year with Russell Wilson. It's not good enough. The athleticism isn't there. So those read option plays, they're not going to work out for you. That's why they brought in Jaxson Dart against the Dallas Cowboys for a play. That's why they brought in Jaxson Dart last week against Kansas City to run those read option plays. And it did work out. Cam had more breathing room. No one views Russell Wilson as this quarterback that's going to go out there and turn the edge on you anymore. He doesn't have that speed. He's regressed. Hopefully I'm wrong about Russ, but I think right now, after this season, you weigh your options and you retire. But the positives here with Jaxson Dart. Hopefully, he can scan the field better than Russell Wilson. That's what he did in the preseason. Now, I want to say this as a disclaimer. That's the preseason. We've seen a lot of rookies go out there. They perform well in the preseason. They come over to the regular season. The game is faster. They don't look the same. But Jaxson Dart can make every single throw that you want. That's what we saw at the college level. That's what we saw in the preseason. And he's faster than Russell Wilson. He's a better athlete than Russ at this stage of his career. And the same with Daniel Jones. You can do more with your playbook with Jaxson Dart, especially in open field. The one thing that does concern me, he hit his head on the turf against the New England Patriots in that preseason game. If he can't protect himself in the regular season, he may be prone to injury. And part of the reason why the New York Giants loved him so much, it was a lot of comparisons with him being an amazing athlete similar to Josh Allen. And we got to see some of that against the Patriots in the preseason and the same against the Buffalo Bills. But if he can scan the defense better and he can just get the football out quicker, that will help this offensive line that is still struggling. And it should open up the run game. They were stacking the box last week against Russell Wilson because they did not trust his deep ball. Get Malik Neighbors involved. The deep ball right now with Jaxson Dart is better than Russell Wilson. Even his moon ball is not the same from last year with George Pickens when he was playing with the Steelers. But Jaxson Dart, better athlete, stronger arm. He's going to give you more plays to run because of his athleticism. Now, just placing him into the starting lineup, it doesn't fix everything here. Brian Daboll did have a lot of dumb play calls last year with Daniel Jones and with Russell Wilson so far in this 3-game sample size. He needs to be a better head coach. He's the main offensive play caller. He rarely uses tight ends in the red zone. He has to use those tight ends more to help out this young quarterback, especially against a tough defense like the Los Angeles Chargers. You have Theo Johnson. Get him more involved. This man only has 6 catches for 49 receiving yards. We know that Malik Neighbors can take the top off the defense. He's going to get a lot of double coverage. That's just the way it is. He's one of the best receivers in the game. Wan'Dale Robinson, can he step up? And the same with Darius Slayton. These are solid wide receivers outside of Malik Neighbors, but they have to be better. Jalen Hyatt so far, he hasn't worked out as a wide receiver. Has had major drops in the past, and this was a man that they selected high in the NFL draft coming out of Tennessee. So the players around Jaxson Dart, they have to help him because he is a rookie, but they're expecting for this rookie to go out there and uplift their franchise. Once again, this is what coaches do when they're feeling that hot seat, when they feel it get very hot, and right now it's scorching hot with Brian Daboll. Tracy's going to be out for the next 2 to 4 weeks. He dislocated his shoulder against Kansas City, but you have Cam Scatterbo. He was able to come in last week. He has some good moments against Kansas City. He's this tough physical runner. He's old school. He doesn't have the electrifying speed. He's not going to break away plays like Saquon, but it's going to take 2 to 3 defenders to bring him down. He's tough and he's aggressive. And he can catch the football at the backfield. He had over 120 scrimmage yards last week against Kansas City. So this is a situation to where I really want to be honest here. This is just a ploy against Giants fans that were crying for Jaxson Dart last week, and rightfully so. Why didn't you make this move last week when Russell Wilson was playing terribly in the fourth quarter? You yank him out the game, you put in Jaxson Dart. They put him in just to run, put him in the pass. And this is one of those situations. If Jaxson Dart doesn't look good against the Chargers, you keep him in this starting lineup. You don't just go out there and yank him out the starting lineup and you put in Jameis Winston. Brian Daboll feels like he's a better quarterback than Jameis Winston, and the same with Russell Wilson, so you keep him out there. But the playmakers, they have to continue to step up, and Malik Neighbors had some good moments last week in terms of getting open. Russell Wilson just couldn't find him. I'm still concerned about this offensive line, but once again, if Jaxson Dart can get the football out quicker and they can do a better job of running the football and some tunnel screens, they can take some of that pressure off of Jaxson. You have Andrew Thomas at the tackle position. He's the best offensive lineman on this team. Andrew Thomas missed the first 2 games dealing with an injury, but you saw what he was able to do last week against Chris Jones. He looked very good in those one-on-one matchups. I'm not worried about him. But JMS at the center position, he has to be better, and that's John Michael Schmitz, for the ones that don't know, by the way. Jermaine at the right tackle position, he needs to step up. He needs to be better. John Runyon and Greg at the guards positions, I don't look at those guys as top players in the NFL. They're bottom tier starters. So the offensive line is still an issue. You have a lot of potential at the wide receiving position outside Malik Neighbors. They need to be more consistent. Now, to give Russell Wilson some backing here, even though he performed terrible against Kansas City, and he had some bad moments against the Washington Commanders, this defense in week 1 and week 2 were just terrible. You allowed 432 total yards of offense against the Commanders, 6.6 yards per play, 220 rushing yards on the ground, 7 yards a carry. He had 0 turnovers in that matchup against the Dallas Cowboys, 478 total yards of offense that you allowed, 343 passing yards to Dak Prescott, 5 yards a carry, and you did have a turnover. Now, against Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes, the defense did look better. Shane Bowen has to be a better coach here. You have Abdul Carter, Kayvon Thibodeau, Brian Burns, Dexter Lawrence. This should be one of the best defensive units in the NFL, and they haven't been. And I talked about this last week. I'm still not a huge fan of Shane Bowen. Yes, you had one solid game against Kansas City, but his tenure as a defensive coordinator has been terrible. They were 27th against stopping the run last year, and you're still having problems to stop the run this year. And you left some big plays last week to Tyquan Thornton and Patrick Mahomes. The adjustments aren't there for Shane Bowen. This is a situation to where the talent is trying to overcompensate for bad coaching. And this is Brian Daboll's guy. The defense was better with Wink Martindale. And I say all that in this video to say this. I feel like Brian Daboll is going to get fired. The same with Joe Shane. The same with Shane Bowen. It's going to happen sooner than later. And if they're able to make it out of this season, they'll still get fired anyway. And I think your brand new head coach may be someone like Jesse Metzer, the defensive coordinator for the Los Angeles Chargers. He's going to be a hot name this offseason. And maybe someone else that comes in from the college level that can help develop Jaxson Dart. But it was too late too soon. And considering the fact that I said earlier in this video, when I'm seeing players like Daniel Jones, Saquon, Xavier McKinney, they all leave, they get a new leash on life. This organization is just bad right now. And I do believe that Jaxson Dart has the intangibles. He has the physical tools to be a franchise quarterback in this league. But I don't trust Brian Daboll to go out there and to develop him to the next level. And you'll have some Giant fans that say, well, what about that playoff win that we had many years ago against the Minnesota Vikings? That was a weak schedule. Give Brian Daboll a lot of credit. It's hard to win in this league, yes. You went to the NFL playoffs, you defeated the Minnesota Vikings, but the Vikings had one of the worst defenses in the NFL, and they caught on to that system with Brian Daboll. Your job as a coach in this league is to help out your players, and your job in this league as a general manager is to make the roster better. Brian Daboll has not went out there and coached the players up to the best of their abilities. And Joe Shane has not made the right decisions on NFL draft day. He just hasn't. You could have had George Pickens on this roster, but you went with Wan'Dale Robinson. And George Pickens can be a headache, but he's a very talented player. You drafted Kayvon Thibodeau in the first round. He's been a hot and cold player. He hasn't been that franchise edge rusher. Evan Neal, you drafted him in the first round. And I've said all these negative things about Evan Neal. I feel bad for when players don't pan out. But he hasn't panned out. He's a bust. And your free agents that you bring in, they don't go out there. They don't make these impactful plays every single week either. This is a bad organization from top to bottom, and they need to clean house as soon as possible. But they're giving Brian Daboll one more chance with Jaxson Dart. We'll see how things work out. My prediction is that they'll lose against the Los Angeles Chargers. Jaxson Dart will look fine in that matchup. And then against New Orleans Saints, he may look like that franchise quarterback because the Saints are one of the worst teams in the NFL. And quick prediction here. If they do lose against the Chargers and then they lose against the New Orleans Saints, they'll fire Brian Dable as soon as the game is over, and the same with the rest of his coaching staff. But let me know in the comment section below, how do you feel about the New York Giants starting Jaxson Dart over Russell Wilson, and can he turn their season around? If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. If you like the video, hit the like button. Most importantly, I want each and every last one of you guys stay safe, stay positive. Thanks for the video, guys. God bless. Peace.